the internet. Thank you for joining us at the second of our series on how to get more from your AI search visitors on your website. My name is John Kelleher. I'm the Chief Executive here at SpotDev. Before that, I ran a marketing agency, and before that, I spent, as you'd totally expect, 10 years as a secondary school music teacher. So that last part of evidence should hopefully give you some reassurance that the presentation will hold together. But really, it's that other two bits of experience that lend the credibility to what I'm going to be talking about today. So we are looking at how to make your website visible to machines, or in other words, how do you show up when people search for you on an AI chatbot or on Google's AI mode, whatever that might be. That's our top goal today. And anyone who was here last week or who saw this talk, the preview of this talk at the Excel Center recently, knows that we're framing this as a problem with two solutions. And that problem I've articulated a few times now, and anyone who was here last week certainly is aware of this problem. And that problem is that your website traffic isn't coming back. There's no two ways about that. The big decline in traffic that you and everyone else has noticed over the last couple of years, thanks to the rise of ChatGPT, of AI overviews, etc., that is something we have to accept. Now we need to look at how we convert more of that traffic, and we spoke about that in great detail last week. If you want to get to the recording of that, then Amy, our head of marketing, will drop a link to last week's recording in the chat. But today we're going to be talking about how we get more visitors to your website in the first place. But let's just make sure we're really clear on what that problem is and why we do still want to get those visitors. Well, this is the big trend that people are seeing. They're showing up in search more often, but they're getting fewer clicks. So the blue line is the clicks that you are getting, and that's in decline. And the purple line are the impressions that you are getting, and that is how often you show in search. So it's strange to see those impressions going up and those clicks going down. If one goes up, you should usually expect the other to go up. But why is that the case? Well, that's the case because in particular on Google, for a long time, they've been optimizing for zero-click search, where Google tries to give the answer as soon as someone conducts the search. They want to instantly give them the information that they're looking for. So because of that, it means that people have fewer reasons to actually click on a link in the first place. And that's if you're lucky enough for people to have searched for you on something like Google. In other scenarios, people are just going straight to ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity, Gemini, and getting their answers there. But the good news, misery loves company. You are not alone. Here's some really high-profile websites that have had similar impacts. I'll go right to left on this one. Stack Overflow was a place where, is a place where developers go to ask questions and share answers. That has had a ginormous decline in search traffic and even just activity on the website since ChatGPT kicked into play. People are getting their answers there instead. Chegg and Course Hero, in fact, any sort of educational resource, they've been seeing big steep declines since the rise of AI and zero-click search as well. And a very commonly cited one last year was, or was it earlier this year, I believe, was that HubSpot, our friends over at HubSpot, they have unquestionably the biggest corporate blog on the internet, and their search traffic just absolutely tanked a while back. They're not worried about it because they're paying attention to the things we spoke about last week and the things that we're going to be speaking about today, and I'm sure a whole host of other things as well. But you're not alone in seeing a decline in traffic. And as I've said last week and in previous sessions, this isn't a huge area of concern for me for any B2B website, any website in general, in fact, because it's not just about your traffic, it's about your conversions. And when people have come from search on AI or search on an AI optimized version of Google, then conversions are much more likely. Your AI traffic, to quote Neil Patel, your AI traffic is your money traffic. And in this chart, you can see that as a website's traffic from AI has a moderate increase, there's a much more significant increase in sales on that website. So that incremental increase in AI-based traffic led to a significant increase in the sales on that website. And this is so important, because if you can get more AI traffic, you're not going to get back to the levels you had in your organic search days. But if you can get more AI traffic, then that traffic will convert at a better rate than your previous organic search. And you should see that you are having a thriving, an absolutely thriving conversion rate on your website, and therefore a successful business. So if the two of these are true, if the traffic is down, but your AI traffic is money traffic, then for our problem, which is that our website traffic isn't coming back, we have two solutions. Solution one is that we generate more AI traffic, and solution two is that we try to convert even more of that. Solution two we addressed last week. Today we are all about solution one. So that's the status quo. That's where we stand. That's what we're looking to address in the rest of today's session. We are primarily interested in how we can generate more AI traffic. And I have a simple, somewhat flippant answer for you on that. If you want to generate more AI traffic, well, you need to have answers everywhere. That is the summary version of this strategy of getting more AI traffic, is you need to have answers everywhere, because AI is answer hungry. AI is being asked questions all the time. People are throwing prompts in left, right, and center saying, what's the best way to do this? How do I go about that? What's this solution, etc. And it's not really figuring that stuff out and answering those questions because it's clever. It's figuring that stuff out because it knows a lot of stuff. It has access to a lot of answers in the first place, and you can feed it with answers. Now, there's some important nuances to that, and we're going to look at those today. But the first thing that you need to be thinking about is, how do you have answers everywhere? Any of you who have read or listened to Marcus Sheridan, who's written two core books, the original two versions were called They Ask You Answer, and the second version is called, the third version is called Endless Customers. It's the same basic concept. What are the questions that your audience has when they are in a buying mode, and how can you answer them? But importantly, in an AI era, you need to distribute those answers far and wide. So let's understand the lay of the land before we start answering the question of how you have answers everywhere. Why does it matter that you have answers everywhere? So let's understand what generates AI traffic in the first place. I want to start by sort of stating the somewhat obvious. The somewhat obvious here is that AI search is not Google search. Here's some searching for services that we offer. We have for a long time shown up as like the top hit on HubSpot Integrations UK. But if someone searches for that, then what do we expect to happen? We don't expect them to go and search again for something else. We expect that they put the search term in, and then they choose one of those links, almost always the top link. Then they click on it and they end up on the website that they chose. That's what we're looking to achieve in a search optimization, a Google search engine, a Bing search engine optimization strategy, because that's the expected behavior. But what's the expected behavior when someone's using an AI-driven tool? Well, they conduct their search, they get an answer, And then they're more likely to ask a follow-up question than they are to just go and click on a link. They're going to get this response here, and then they might follow up with, well, which one of these should I work with, given that I am based in Newcastle, or given that I am in such and such an industry, which one of these should I work with? They're not leaving ChatGPT, Gemini, Perplexity, Claude. They're not leaving that platform after that initial search. They're continuing on. They are asking themselves, or they're asking their chatbots more questions to get more information. And it's that process of continually asking until they know their answers and they've made their decision that leads to this, that leads to AI traffic being money traffic. Because the people on your website, once they've gone through that repeated asking process, they've reached a point where they know what they want. I went and bought myself a new iPad the other day. I must admit it wasn't an AI driven journey, but when I went into the store, I said, oh, can I have this iPad with this storage, with this color, with this cellular connection, and I want this accessory as well. I knew precisely what I wanted. The person in the Apple store was able to tap on his little iPhone and get me exactly what I wanted in moments. And he was expecting to have to answer lots and lots of questions. But I was a very well-educated buyer. I made the choices I needed to make before I even entered the store. So that is the sort of experience you need to be curating. And to do that, you need to make sure that AI has all of the answers about you. Because if it doesn't, and someone else does, it's going to feed information from that business rather than from your business. So you need to make sure your website and other sources are resplendent with perhaps the same information that in the past you guarded behind your sales team, guarded behind a sales meeting request form. So let's have a think about that. How do we get that information into these chatbots in the first place? How do we give that resplendent information so that the chatbot can continue recommending you throughout the process? Well, there's an element that you need to make sure you're not optimizing for, and that is you're not optimizing for the AI's native knowledge. You're still just optimizing for search. If you're optimizing for the AI's native knowledge, great, at some point that will have some sort of payoff, but that could be a long time and you're not really in control of that. And the reason I'm referring to this is that each platform has its own knowledge cutoff date, and that changes incredibly infrequently. I double checked all of this information this morning before today's session to make sure that this hadn't changed overnight. You know, AI does change surprisingly frequently. So I wanted to make sure I was fully up to date on this. ChatGPT's native knowledge cuts off in June last year. Claude's native knowledge cuts off in May this year. And Gemini's native knowledge cuts off in January of this year. And for anyone watching this on a catch up in a few years' time, yeah, it's December 2025 right now. So it's ages ago that this stuff had additional information in. Nothing you add to your website today is going to show up in the AI's native knowledge anytime soon. So what you're optimizing for is for AI searching the internet about the topics you care about. So AI, just like a human, has a web search tool available to it. You ask, I'll say Claude, you ask Claude a question. If it thinks that it needs recent information to be able to answer that honestly, it will conduct a web search, just like you will, except a bit better. Your chatbot already knows things about you. You've given it custom instructions, you've answered questions about who you are, and it knows the previous things that you've asked. So when it searches for something like HubSpot integrations UK, it's not going to give such a simple search result. It's going to say HubSpot integrations UK for mid-market firms in the construction industry with 12 employees. it's going to be searching much more precisely than you would have done to give you much more accurate results and much more relevant results. And it's using its search tool for that. And that's when the processes we're going to apply today, that's when they kick in and they become useful for you in the results that are returned. This is the way in which you can make sure you appear in AI search results. So really, this is still search engine optimization, but it's thinking about a different type of searcher, one who's patient, will add more keywords into the search, more specific keywords, and won't be afraid to do a follow-up search if the results that came back weren't accurate enough. So if this is true, if the AI is really just a process of optimizing for search, it helps us to know which sites AI searches when it's going through this process. Where does it trust the most when it goes and looks at a resource? So I'm going to give you some information. I'm going to pop this on the screen on the next slide, but I want you to just take a very healthy dose of salt as I put this on the screen. I'll talk about what that salt should be, but broadly speaking, when AI conducts a search, it's having a look, yes, in general searching the internet, but it puts particular value on these 6. And I'll share the link to where I gathered this information from as part of our follow-up. But it looks at YouTube, it looks at Wikipedia, it looks at oh, I've got YouTube on there twice. That was supposed to be, oh no, I've got Forbes. I'll have to figure out what on earth I've done there. Looks at YouTube, looks at Wikipedia, looks at LinkedIn, Quora, Forbes, and I'm missing Reddit. That second YouTube should have been Reddit. These are the sources that it tends to prioritize in its search results. And then, because of this fact, because of this information, we hear many an AI guru telling you to put all of your AI optimization efforts onto these channels. Make sure you're showing up on YouTube. Make sure you're showing up on Reddit. Make sure you're showing up on Quora. It's telling you to go to all these places, or these gurus are telling you to go to all these places and optimize on those channels. And as you'll see today, I think you should, and our research that we've conducted here at SpotDev suggests you should, but perhaps not as the primary focus of your AI optimization strategy. And why is that? Well, that's because, yes, these are the websites that it trusts the most. And when you look at citations, and this is what we really know, we don't necessarily know it trusts them, we know that it cites them the most often in its responses. But when we look at the citations, these are the things that show up. But as with any statistical analysis, you have to look at what question was asked. And the question that's generally asked when these things show up is, well, what are the websites that are cited most often? And as with any search strategy, the real truth and the real value sits in the long tail. The real value in any search strategy has always been in the long tail. What do I mean by that? Well, the classic example in SEO training is when someone's searching for a new pair of trainers. Yeah. So you can try to optimize for the keyword trainers, but you're fighting everyone. You can try to optimize for the keyword red trainers, and then all of a sudden you're only fighting people who are also optimizing for red trainers. Or you can have a really long tail keyword. Red trainers, ideal for people with plantar fasciitis who are looking to run in a marathon and are male and 32 years old. That longer tail search was always where the riches were to be found. That was the highest value. And this statistical analysis that's gone on here and is being overrepresented in the guru advice that we are seeing on the places like LinkedIn and from other webinars, etc., is overemphasizing these sites as the sources to optimize for. So let's have a look. When we factor in the long tail, what does the AI search strategy really look for? Well, first of all, it does look at all of those channels that we've spoken about, but it starts by looking at first-party websites. That's what it will value the most in that process. What's a first-party website? Well, it's your website. If you're searching about Coca-Cola, it's going to prioritize Coca-Cola's website. Equally, if you are searching for fizzy sweet drinks, it's going to look at first-party websites that are relevant to that. So it's going to have a look at the websites, the first-party websites that show up for that. But of course, that's a much smaller proportion of overall searches and therefore overall citations. So we don't have that on this list. But it's the thing that your search is going to value the most during that process. So the first-party websites, we're going to spend time looking at that today. Also looks at listings and directories such as G2 or TripAdvisor. That's the thing that it seems to put the second greatest degree of importance on. Then what's referred to as universal authorities, your Wikipedias, your YouTubes. I didn't think back in my teaching days that I'd ever be calling either of those an authority, but there we go. That's how AI seems to view the world. Then it looks at your earned media. That might be BBC, Sky News, trade media, so on and so forth. And then communities such as Reddit, LinkedIn, etc. But essentially, 86% of citations come from the source brands directly. The sources that brands directly control or manage, the first-party websites. So that first row, your own website, accounts for 86% of all citations. But of course, it's a long tail, so it doesn't show up in this list, which is why we're not hearing about it as much as perhaps is ideal elsewhere. I strongly encourage you that if you are looking to generate more traffic to your website from AI, because you know that AI traffic is money traffic, that you focus your initial efforts on your own website. And I liken this to the classic adage of putting on your own oxygen masks first, but in this case, put your own website's oxygen mask on first. And by goodness, did it take AI an awful long time to come up with an image that was this good. So imagine the ones that I got before I got to that version of it. But don't neglect your own website when creating your AI traffic optimization strategy. That's the message that I want you to take away the most is yes, all these sources matter. Yes, all of this advice is talking about other channels, but I want you to be focused on putting your website's oxygen mask on first. So how can you optimize your own website to get more AI traffic? Going back to the theme, it's have answers everywhere. How can you have answers everywhere on your website? Well, let's start with the basics. The most common source is frequently asked questions. However you've approached FAQs, frequently asked questions on your website in the past, now is a time to double down on that approach. You need to make sure that your FAQs are more in quantity, more in quality, and that you have put more effort into making sure that your FAQs really sing to your audience. So this is an example for one of our websites here. We're specifically calling out who these are for. CMOs, CFOs, and sales leaders ask us these questions. So we're making sure we've said who would be interested in these answers. We're then listing out, and just a fraction of the questions are shown on here, we're listing out a series of questions that people are likely to have either as their initial question that will get them to show up, or as their follow-up question once they've had an additional, once they've had that initial response from ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, Perplexity, etc. And this is probably coming to a big UI change for the world. I think at the moment, the standard user interface module for an FAQ is this classic accordion appearance where you've got the answer, you've got a question in front of you, you click a button and the answer appears. I think we're probably at the advent where that's going to have had its day, because good FAQ sections that meet the needs of AI traffic search and the real needs of buyers, they're going to become very, very long indeed. So we need to think about what the user interface element is for the second half of the 2020s in order to optimize for this. But importantly, you can't just answer the easy questions. You need to answer the hard questions. As Marcus Sheridan puts this, you need to answer the questions that nobody else is prepared to answer. So last week, I spoke about having a pricing calculator on your website, but you need to make sure you have FAQs about pricing as well, so that when people ask ChatGPT, how much is it going to cost me to do whatever it is that you sell, that it's going to give the answer that you provide, because you want the price anchor that people get to be your answer to that. You don't want to get them to get someone else's much cheaper pricing in that response from ChatGPT. You want them to have the pricing that aligns with your business, because as we all know, an anchor price is the price that people expect to hear when they enter the sales conversation. If they've gotten a price that's super low and they end up speaking to your sales team and they come up with a much higher price, there's a sticker shock element to that, and people are going to be frightened off. Equally, let's answer the other hard questions. How long is it going to take? Let's get a clear answer for that. Don't just tell them what they want to hear. Give them a great answer so that when they speak to you about that, they're not surprised about it. If there's a question that is something that highlights an inadequacy in your product or highlights that it's not for someone, let's call that out early in the FAQ process so that people know not to come to you for that. But equally, so that AI can check, oh, is it suitable for someone who is, in our case here, a CFO, and they read through the questions and it says, this is not suitable for CFOs, it excludes them out. Or if it doesn't mention that it's not suitable for that, that's a positive signal. The FAQ section of your website is answer fuel for your AI strategy. And I see Amy has quite rightly popped a question in there asking if you have an FAQ section on your website. I'd love to see some answers to that. I can already see a couple of emoji reactions, but I'd love to know if you feel that your FAQ section is both comprehensive or work in progress. It's always fair enough. I'd love to know if your FAQ section is both comprehensive and answering difficult questions. If there's a type of question that you're worried about putting on the website because you're worried about scaring people away, feel free to put some information in there. No, there is a fear it will reveal too much to our competitors. I spoke about this last week about pricing calculators. They already know. They already know. You've been secret shopped. You've been secret shopped. I know we were secret shopped earlier this month. I suppose it was last month now. We were already so early in December. We were secret shopped recently. I know that for a fact. People got a whole load of information about our business. If they have spoken to former employees, they know this. They've got all that information. I think I've seen another great comment here, one I hear a lot. We have several FAQs. Oh no, this isn't what I thought it was. This is great. We have several due to the mixture of markets we cover, due to us handling physical sales products over offering quotes. This is great. Have FAQs that really call things out. We have FAQ in content-specific blogs. Do you think this is too many layers deep in the website for LLMs to crawl? And should they be moved up to services pages instead? My short answer is have both, and have the FAQ section of your website page link out to those blog posts. And blog posts is something I'm going to speak about now, in fact. So if I take this here, make sure that you have blog content with simple, actionable IP that addresses questions early in the buying process. So what do I mean by this? Actionable IP is your intellectual property. What's the intellectual property that you have as a business that you can position so that you come across as unique, and then when an AI search finds you, it surfaces that and it says, oh, well, this is, in our case, the SpotDev website redesign decision framework. Your brand appears next to it, and there's a link because it's citing you, and it sends them off if they ever go and click on that. Your brand is associated, and it's not hard to come up with your own IP. It's really not hard because you already have it. Um, some stuff can come straight from your internal sales processes. If you've got a sales qualification matrix in the business, turn that into a readiness assessment or a readiness framework. Put it in a lovely 2x2 grid and write a blog post about it. And all of a sudden, you've got actionable IP. Give it your name. Give it your name. So we've called this the SpotDev framework. Give it your name in there so that your name shows up. Give it a memorable name that's relevant to the question they're trying to solve, and get it on your blog and link to it and talk about it on your social media channels. Have actionable intellectual property for every part of the buying process, because these things are going to come up when people are asking themselves questions about your category of solution. So for us, they might be asking about websites. For you, if you are, what did we have? We had a product business. Maybe you are selling, fast-moving consumer goods. Maybe you're selling milk. Well, in that scenario, you can answer questions about what's the packaging, and you can have the framework for choosing which packaging to buy from us. So have a 2x2 matrix that says how far it's got to travel, how fresh it's got to be. Well, you're clearly ideal for having our cartons, but you want our vacuum sealed glass bottles with a little vacuum gap in there. Have a really clear framework that makes it easy for people to make decisions. Make that into intellectual property so that you show up in those searches. We have one on every product page specific to the product, condition, service, some more comprehensive than others. I'm assuming that's talking about FAQs again, and that sounds absolutely ideal. We'll talk in a future session about how you can consolidate these into a standardized piece while still having that separate channel, but that will be something for the future. But that's a great strategy that you're putting in place. And I've mentioned blog. One of our commenters in the chat has mentioned blogs. I'm talking about putting your IP on your blog, but blogs in general, do not give up on your blog. And I'll be brutally honest, humans aren't reading your blog as much as they used to. The evidence for that is in the traffic. We've already seen HubSpot with their incredibly comprehensive corporate blog. They are struggling for traffic on that. Blogs are no longer the source for traffic that they once were, but they are the source for having answers everywhere. Your blog is a great way to have in-depth answers on specific topics. And you can see here one that's worked very well for us. We recently weren't showing up in either AI search or even organic search, actually, for data migrations to HubSpot. And we completed a series. I think we did 10 blog posts in a relatively short space of time, all about that topic. And we pointed them to a key page that we wanted our website visitors to come to. And lo and behold, we started to show up in both AI search traffic and in organic traffic. We've had visitors on those topics. It makes a really big difference to have a suite of blog posts on a topic that answer the questions that people are asking. And if I was to do a follow-up to this, which we absolutely shall, let's say why multiple HubSpot test migrations save your business, I would have a variant of that. Why multiple HubSpot test migrations save your manufacturing business. Getting more and more precise so that those answers show up more reliably when the right people are looking for things. Did you have help from an LLM to write those blog posts? Absolutely. In fact, in this particular case, for this, we had a process where we just recorded me talking. As you can see, I'm quite comfortable talking unnecessarily lengthily. I spoke at great length into recording. I think I recorded myself just waffling on for a couple of hours on a particular topic, transcribed that information, placed that into a specific process that we were using. It was an automated script at that point. And then I asked it to create blog posts based on that. And then we optimized that content afterwards. So yes, absolutely, feel free to use LLMs to do it. But for the love of all that is lovable, don't just get the LLM to write it, because then you're not putting original content out there. You need to have original content that's come from your humans, your experts. When you provide it with their in-depth information and ask it to organize that, you're going to lead to a great strategy. And that strategy, I've already hinted at here. Use the hub and spoke strategy. This has had all sorts of different names over the years. I can see a question's just come in. I'll come to that in a moment. A hub and spoke strategy does work really very well indeed, but some people call it pillar pages or topic clusters, whatever that might be. But essentially, it's where you have one page of your website that is the definitive source of information for that topic, and it goes into it in great depth, and then a series of shorter blog posts on that topic that then point to that primary in-depth hub post. An example of that on our website, if you have a look at the growth-driven design guide that we've got, you can see here on our HubSpot hub and spoke page or a topic cluster page, we've got one about growth-driven website design. We've got a pillar page about that. We've got all of these other topics and all of these other blog posts, all that point towards that to help gain the traffic there. I've got a question here. If you are dealing with a market largely consisting of people with high technical knowledge, would this still be as effective? Let's say if you were catering to HVAC contractors, for example. Yes, I'd say this would probably be even more effective in that scenario, because that market is looking for validation of your business from their deep technical expertise. So they're going to be searching for things such as, I need to find a vendor who has deep HVAC knowledge on such and such a room type and handles certain, I don't know enough about your business, I'm afraid, so certain humidity levels, etc. Help me find a great vendor for this. Then they're going to go to search, and they're much more likely to find your organization if you've written on that topic. So the more technical your business, the more I suggest you write this. Remember, you're not writing for the humans. That was one of the first points I made here about the blog. You know, the blog strategy, humans aren't really reading your blog like they used to. I was an avid reader of blogs back in the noughties. I wrote many a blog, I read many a blog. These days, I very rarely read a blog in general. And that's just a generic trend. But you want to show up in the searches that people are conducting with AI tools, and your blog combined with your actionable IP and combined with your FAQ sections are a great way to show up in that. So hopefully that's helped to answer that question there. So there are some nice, easy things that you can do with your website in order to increase the depth of information. The short version of this is have answers everywhere. The second portion of that is making sure you've also got answers everywhere for the AI itself. And we've spoken about this in some of the promotional material around these events, and I've spoken about this at previous events too. But we consider that there are now two layers of the web. There's the human layer and there's the AI layer. If you think of it as a cake, you know, you've got your human layer at the top of the cake, and that's the bit that the humans slice into, eat, and they're delighted. But the layer beneath that is the AI layer. And that information is, that section of your website is much, much deeper and more detailed than the human layer. You know, humans want a glossy, beautiful hero section. Humans want an interactive pricing calculator. Humans want to see beautiful brand, and it needs to be conversion optimized so they end up filling in a form. But AI, I've told you before, it's answer hungry. So it wants text-based, explanatory, answer-heavy, detail optimized content that would just frighten a human away. So one strategy, and I'll be clear, I'm not certain that this strategy that I'm about to share is completely proven yet. We're seeing contradictory data on this, and we're not sure if that's good implementation versus bad implementation, or if it's just that this isn't an effective strategy. But it's a straightforward enough thing to do where it's worth a punt. So have a go at this. The easy one is an llms.txt file. And I've shared this one here. This is just a really dense document written in markup format that is a comprehensive overview of your business and all of the questions and answers that people might have. It's also a summary of how they can go and find out more information about your website. No human, that's not quite true, very few humans are going to want to read your llms.txt file. But AIs and LLMs are going to be very interested in content presented with this much detail. And this is our own actual one. You can see we've got here at the bottom of the screen, you can see we've got when SpotDev is a good recommendation. And we actually, further down in it, have when SpotDev is a bad recommendation. And so we're just making it clear when we should and shouldn't be included in answers. And we've got all of the key information we'd want there for someone to receive if they ask a relevant question to this. So an llms.txt file, work with your web developer. It's a very straightforward piece to upload because you don't need to have any code on your website for this, just a simple text file that you upload to the root of your website with /llms.txt. If your CMS doesn't permit that, redirect from there to where you can host that simple text file, and then the service can go and have a look through that detail. How do you write your LLM's text file? Take a tip out of the book that I suggested earlier when it came to speaking about that content here. Just record yourself talking at great length about your business, go through all of your FAQs, answer them out loud, keep going through it in great detail. And then once you've got that, ask an AI to do a first draft of your llms.txt file, and then revisit it, edit it, work with the AI to pull it together. And it's a very straightforward process that you can do. Not proven as a strategy, but so straightforward and so simple to do that it's well worth a look. There are other things that you can do to optimize the AI layer of your website, but I'm going to save that for a future session focused on website developers themselves. Should you use Markdown or XML in your llms.txt file? That's a fair question. What I've been finding when I've looked at seemingly successful llms.txt file is they are much more often written in Markdown format than they were in XML format. I'm not certain whether it makes a huge difference or not, but there are elements of when you look at a text file, generally speaking, you're expecting to see Markdown more than you are XML. I would expect to see XML in a .xml file. So there's a congruence piece and therefore a trust piece that we're signaling to the AI. And on top of that, really, we are just looking to flood it with relevant information, flood's the wrong term, to provide lots of relevant answers in that response. So I would strongly encourage you to focus on Markdown because we've seen that seemingly successful more often than we have XML files. Any suggestions on where it should be placed on your website at all if it is added? It should be added at the root directory of your website. So it should be just /llms.txt. If that's not possible, host it wherever you can on your website and create a 301 redirect from /llms.txt to the file itself. Okay, I'm going to say that this is the portion of the presentation that's focused on your own website. And I promised you that we would also talk about those other channels. And I've made sure that this is the shorter portion of what we're speaking about, purely because you can go and get a lot of this information from many a guru online. And I didn't want to overemphasize the piece that I think is the shorter tail of search results. But let's have a look at AI's search strategy again. We spoke about first-party websites, that's your website, and we looked at what we can do there. But what can you do to make sure you show up in listings and directories? Because AI does seem to care quite deeply about those sources. But that's a nice, easy result. make sure you show up in the relevant directories for your business, and make sure that your listing has answers everywhere. So if you're a marketing agency, show up on Clutch. If you're a tradesperson, show up on Checkertrade. If you're a legal services, sorry, if you're in legal services, show up on Chambers and Partners, Technology, G2, so on and so forth. Make sure you are showing up on these listing sites, on these directories, and make sure that your listing is detailed. It's not good enough to just have your name on there and then like a simple paragraph saying we do such and such thing. Don't be a marketing agency and say we're a full service marketing agency. Have great detail about what it is you offer, who you offer it for, where your team's based, what price bands you suit, which industries you do your best work for, which technologies you are happy to use in the process. Makes a really comprehensive answer, because AI, when it conducts its search, it will be flooded with options. And if it's looking at a whole sea of thin answers and it sees one or two in-depth answers, guess which one it's going to go for. It's going to go for that in-depth answer. So list your city, list your head count, list your case studies, have everything that you can possibly think of included on that relevant directory. And that's a really great trust verifier for the AI when it conducts its search as well. Okay, so I'm assuming web forums or such sites are no longer of any use. Well, we do have a reference to a couple of those shortly. Communities in general. Notice that I've got them 5th on the list because they come up a lot in citations, but they are the 5th most trusted by the AI, essentially is what the evidence from Yext here seems to suggest. But it's not going to do you harm to be on them, provided they've got good domain authority. But I would be starting on your website, then listings and directories. The next item is universal authorities. And I've got the examples here as Wikipedia or YouTube. And it's definitely the case that AI likes to go and have a check of a Wikipedia article. It's the mission to gather all human knowledge, or whatever it might be that Wikipedia has put itself forward as. And that's a great mission. And it's so easy to add an article on there. But I don't know if you've ever tried editing or adding an article onto Wikipedia. I did quite a while back, and it's quite a daunting experience. I believe the Wikipedians who do all the editing call themselves the dragons, and it's quite a dragony experience. And my top advice to you is, don't write your own Wikipedia article. You need to meet the NNV criteria. You need to be sufficiently notable. And just because you're big in your industry doesn't make you notable. You need to have been covered on a news article at a national level. You need to have been referenced by lots of trade publications, etc. You need to be a very neutral article. It needs to be very verifiable. So the truth is, when you hit that level, someone else is going to write it for you. The Wikipedia editors, they're so on it, and you don't really want to upset them. There's lots of examples of people creating Wikipedia pages, investing a lot of time to it, and it's taken down in no time at all because it's insufficiently notable, insufficiently neutral, and insufficiently verifiable. So don't waste your time aggravating Wikipedians. So instead, I suggest that you just go nuts on YouTube. Go absolutely nuts on getting yourself lots and lots of content on YouTube. And I'm not particularly suggesting this here in order to be particularly successful on YouTube itself. There are whole strategies and approaches that you can take to that. You need a mix of short form, mid-length and long form content. Where you really want to be focused is how to be showing up in AI search traffic in the first place. For that, you want lots of long form content that shows your expertise. And the reason you want that, taking last week's webinar as an example, is YouTube gets the transcript of everything you've said in your video and makes that freely available. And YouTube is the 2nd largest search engine on the internet. Google's the 1st largest, YouTube's the 2nd largest. So it's good for your organic search as well. But in particular, all of that information, that transcript that I've got on the right-hand side of this slide here, is suddenly available to search. And so your knowledge, your expertise is showing up in YouTube, which means it's showing up in AI search. Got a question. Is YouTube relevant for highly niche B2B brands? Oh my goodness, yes. Oh my goodness, yes. YouTube is just filled with all of these micro communities of people who want to become deeply expert in a specific topic. And when people are on YouTube, the algorithm just feeds them more and more information. I mean, I've got a video on YouTube that I made 3 years ago, I think, that is about middleware, an explanation of how middleware works, which I thought, oh, this is a bit of a punt. It's it's far too out there, and that's had 31,000 views, and it gets plenty of direct messages sent to us as well. It's through our own channels. It's a really great source of eyeballs, and because it's an in-depth topic in a long form format, it's great for our organic search presence and our AI search presence as well. I would strongly encourage you in any area, and especially niche areas, to have a YouTube presence, even if you're not trying to be successful on YouTube, as part of your AI search strategy. Okay, so are there any concerns that ongoing changes such as the UK's Online Safety Act may disrupt AI pulling data from certain sources, Wikipedia being the obvious one? I think regardless of legislative changes, there's always changes approaching every single strategy that you're going to be looking at. So regardless of whether that's AI optimization or any marketing strategy in general, there's always going to be shifting sands. And Google's algorithms have changed many times, and that's had huge impacts. I've spoken before, I've got a blog post on this as well, that the sky is always falling for marketers. There's always a marketing apocalypse on the horizon. So all you can do is focus on writing great content, promoting great content, having great resources that are relevant for now and as future-proofed as you can make them, and continually optimizing. I'm not a big fan of avoiding a successful strategy because something might change in the future. If we sit on things that could work, then we're allowing someone else to take that gain in the short term. But I don't dispute that changes in legislation, etc., are going to change things. But optimize while you can, and focus on the controllables. Control the controllables. So what else is there? There's earned media. Earned media, this isn't a particularly classic AI concept, is it? We don't necessarily want to appear on Sky News because of AI. We want to appear on Sky News because of the profile that it might create for us. But any sort of earned media adds authority to your organization, to your presence, etc. You want to show up in places where it's clear that you're authoritative. And of course, that's going to lead to you ending up with a Wikipedia page in the first place because you are an authoritative organization. Suddenly I can't say that word, that's fun. And you'd think that this is something that's not in your control, but anyone who's ever come across PR is aware of the control that's available to you. And I'd suggest for your AI strategy, focusing on your digital PR strategy. 3 very simple, actionable approaches that you can take here. Ideally quarterly if you can. Publish a data story. And this is the sort of news article you see, 72% of young people have no brains left because they used AI, or 20% of older people are struggling to drive at night because of LED headlights, etc. Have a data story. Use your own unique research and data that you have access to create and publish a report that has original research and a meaningful statistic, and then write a press release and send it out to the folks. There's every chance that you'll get some sort of traction from that. And if it's a genuinely meaningful story that's not just an advert for your brand, then you should see some degree of traction on that, if it's well written and well relevant to the time. Slightly lower bar you can set for yourself is the classic writing guest posts. Identify third-party websites that would benefit from your perspective. Ask them to let you publish a guest post, then write it and send it. Don't just send them blog posts on spec, but write blog posts. So again, you are giving answers everywhere. Make sure your brand is clearly attributed, that you are clearly attributed, so that it's your perspective that's risen in the AI search results. That's a nice, easy way in. And sign up to Press Plugs. Harrow's, I believe, shut down now, but Press Plugs seems to be thriving and offer quotes to the media on there. So, what can you be an expert on? Keep an eye on the news, have pre-written quotes on specific topics so that journalists can come to you through a channel like Press Plugs when they need a quote on something that you are relevant for. It's a nice, easy way to get digital PR, good for your brand and great for your AI search reputation. And then the final item today in your AI search strategy is the communities piece. So communities such as Reddit and LinkedIn. There are ways to show up in Reddit. There are ways to get yourself increasing in the number of mentions and positive mentions for you on Reddit, but there is an element of the black hat on that. And really, if you as a brand are trying to get posts about you, you definitely don't want to be coming on there with your own brand handle. You definitely don't want to be coming on there as yourself saying, oh yes, we're doing this great thing. Redditors are very, very protective, a bit like the Wikipedia editors. Reddit users are remarkably protective of their subreddit's neutrality. So my general advice at the moment is leave Reddit alone, but activate your employees on LinkedIn. There's a reason why top founders and top CEOs, etc., are posting largely non-salesy content on LinkedIn at the moment. Is to part of the profile raising, it's part of the reputation raising, and that authority raising. So have yourself writing content on LinkedIn, but have your senior executives writing content on LinkedIn too. Help them with it. Don't write it all for them. It needs to have their authoritative, genuine voice conveyed within it. Don't have everyone posting exactly the same content, but do make sure that they are active on LinkedIn and give them all the support in the world that they need to be able to do that. Because that's your combination of different search strategies. If you've got all 5 of these things going, focused first on your first party website, your own website, then optimizing in listings and directories, then on those universal authorities, focusing on YouTube, then making yourself available for news articles and writing data stories with press releases, and then showing up and activating on LinkedIn, you have got a very strong chance of being the preferred option that appears in an AI search. Because like I said, this is not optimizing just for the AI's native knowledge. It's not even that. It's showing up within the search that AI cares about, because these channels are the ones that it genuinely has interest in. So after this session, you'll receive an email. It will include these slides, including our cheat sheet here for the things that we believe do and do not work and what we've got the evidence for. I should comment to the publish on LinkedIn one we've got in the unproven category, but that's to do with LinkedIn articles. So we'll get that clarified actually. LinkedIn posts seem to be working very well at the moment. If you would like to work with SpotDev, you've got 2 options. If you're a marketing team or you're a business leader, the QR code on the left and the link that Amy will pop in the chat momentarily invites you to request a quote from SpotDev. But if you're an agency or a consultancy and you don't have an in-house development team, or you don't have HubSpot skills within your organization, or perhaps you don't have enterprise level experience, then SpotDev would be delighted to work with you in our partner program where we pay referral fees for work sent to us in the first 12 months. So there are 2 different ways you can work with us. This is the last of our events for 2025. We're going to be really doubling down on events in 2026. There'll be a webinar every single month. We are attending 12 trade shows next year that we've already committed to, and probably some more. And we'll be doing 4 in-person events throughout the year as well that are SpotDev hosted events. So please do keep an eye on your emails from the Marvelous Amy, and we would love to see you at a future webinar, a future in-person event, or at one of the trade shows we're attending. So thank you very much, everyone, for your time, and we'll see you all next time.